Okay, so picture this. Your entire nation is on the brink of collapse. There's chaos everywhere, a foreign superpower is about to invade, and you are terrified. So you turn to your spiritual advisors, the prophets, for a word from God. But here's the problem. They're telling you two completely opposite things. This was the exact crisis happening in ancient Judah. So on one side, you have the prophet Jeremiah. His message is frankly brutal. He's saying, our society is broken. We have to change or we will be destroyed. Exile isn't just a possibility, it's coming. But then on the other side, you have a way more popular group of prophets. And their message? It's like a soothing balm. They're saying, hey, relax. God promised to protect the city forever. We are untouchable. I mean, with the fate of the entire nation hanging in the balance, the people had to make an impossible choice. Who do you trust? The guy screaming danger or the chorus singing comfort? It's a seriously high-stakes problem. Okay, let's dive into this and figure out how you even begin to solve it. To really get this, you have to understand that the crime of the false prophets wasn't just, being wrong about the future. It was the kind of hope they were selling. It was this deceptive, really destructive hope that was basically steering the country right off a cliff. This was their catchphrase. They said it so often it became this kind of national mantra. And of course, it was total catnip to a population that was scared out of its mind. They were focusing only on God's promises of protection and conveniently ignoring all the stuff about justice and faithfulness. It was the ultimate theological loophole. All the perks, none of the responsibility. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the source material talks about the nation's true condition, all the injustice and corruption. It wasn't just a few bad decisions. No, it was described as a sickness deep inside the society, a spiritual cancer that was quietly spreading everywhere. And this analogy just nails it. The false prophets were acting like doctors who prescribed a simple painkiller for a huge malignant tumor. They were treating a fatal wound like it was just a little scratch. Their message of peace, peace was the drug that numbed everybody and gave them a divine permission slip to just ignore the disease that was killing them from the inside. Okay, so you got to be thinking, wasn't there a system for this? A way to tell the real deal from a fraud? And yep, there was. The book of Deuteronomy actually lays out a kind of field guide, a checklist for how to verify a true prophet. The rules seem pretty straightforward, right? You have to be an Israelite, you have to speak in God's name, you can't tell people to follow other gods. But then you get to that fourth rule, the big one. Every single prediction you make has to come true. Not most of them, 100%. And this is the critical flaw in the system. What do you do when both sides, Jeremiah and his opponents, pass the first three tests? They're all Israelites, they're all speaking in the Lord's name, but they are making completely opposite predictions about what is about to happen. How on earth can you apply the 100% accuracy test in real time? You can't. And that's the devastating catch-22. The people of Judah couldn't just wait around to see who was right. By the time history tragically proved Jeremiah's warnings were correct, the city was already burning and the people were being marched into exile. The test worked, sure, but it was basically a historical autopsy. The patient was already dead. This is where the whole investigation just pivots, because Jeremiah, feeling totally cornered, he proposes a completely different kind of test. It's immediate, it's powerful, and honestly, it's an incredibly bold claim that cuts through all the noise by asking one simple question. Where did you get your information? He asks this amazing rhetorical question. And he's not just talking about being vaguely inspired. No, he's implying that there is a literal meeting, a divine inner circle, a heavenly strategy session, and that all the other prophets, they weren't even on the guest list. This whole idea of the council of the Lord is so cool. It's this ancient picture of a throne room in heaven, where God, like a king, gathers his heavenly court to make decisions and issue decrees that actually shape history. A true prophet, according to Jeremiah, has basically got a press pass to this meeting. So Jeremiah's whole claim boils down to this. Look, I was in the room where it happened. I heard the king's decree. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm just reading you the minutes from the meeting. And his accusation against the others? They skipped the meaning entirely and were just selling their own wishful thinking as a message from God. Now, of course, this battle between a really hard truth and a comfortable lie, it didn't end with ancient Judah. The source material makes it super clear that this is a fundamental human tension, one that echoes with, startling clarity in our own time.
That temptation to deliver a message that soothes instead of challenges, it's timeless. Promising gain without pain, telling people exactly what they want to hear, dodging tough subjects just to keep the audience happy, or seeking out leaders who just validate what we already believe. It's the exact same pattern. It's the old message of peace, peace, just repackaged for today.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty provocative question for ourselves in our own lives, where we are just bombarded by a constant fire hose of conflicting messages from experts, from algorithms, from influencers, all of them claiming to have the answer. How do we know who has actually been in the council and who is just selling us a vision from their own mind? What's our test for truth?